surely no animal has more justly deserved the praises showered upon it than the horse, that noble and courageous friend of man who serves his masters in every sphere of life with such intelligent faithfulness. The world admires the horse and still finds it indispensable, even in these mechanical days. Britain is no exception. Indeed, so firmly is the horse established in this island that there are far more horses than mechanical vehicles, and they are found in every branch of agriculture, commerce, and industry. In London's busy traffic, 40,000 horses help to serve the needs of this great city's population. With the frequent halts which distribution entails, horses are particularly suitable, and one famous company alone uses 3,500. Another familiar sight in any large town is the great Brewers' drays, whose 4-ton loads are drawn by magnificent Shire horses. Purchased at 5 years old, they have an average working life of 8 years. The drivers are proud of their teams as they drive. Light van horses, of course, form the larger percentage of commercial uses. By the way, one of these was once in a famous circus. And this pony is certainly attractive enough for any show. The condition of the horses is really a reflection of their stables. With the Britisher's natural love of animals, these names are a symbol of his affection. He gives the best to his equine friends. Saddlery is still the craftsman's job, for machinery is not yet clever enough to make and fit a collar. Throughout the year and the country, horse shows are continually held. Every kind of horse finds its place at these shows, and one of the most famous of its type is the Van Horse Parade, which takes place on Easter Monday. Hundreds of light van horses, cobs and ponies, mainly belonging to small traders, collect in Regent's Park. The keen interest that these van drivers take is indicated by the fact that they give up their bank holiday to show their charges, and since the prizes are very small, there can be no other motive but pride in their charges. The Lord Mayor of London presents the prizes. Every type of van and every size of animal can be seen at this fine show. And when the presentations by the Lord Mayor start the 5-mile procession, the crowd lines the route. Another show that is really unique is the Custis Parade. Costers were originally itinerant street traders, but the term now applies only to a particular London type, who are symbolized in the pearly kings and queens. Their clothes are gaily decorated with pearl buttons, and though the number of costers decreases, they are still a picturesque feature of London life. It may seem strange for such a highly industrialized country as Britain to retain such historic transport relics as the coach, yet every year brings more enthusiasm for the coaching map, in which several teams of 4 in hand start from Windsor Castle and proceed through the great park. They make a grand sight, a link with the past, and an admiration for the present. Britain's countryside is typified by the ploughing matches that are held. Teams of Clydesdales, Suffolks and Shires are driven by expert ploughmen to whom even the slightest deviation from the straight and narrow path, or rather furrow, is unforgivable. How much they owe to their fine horses and how much to their own skill, it is difficult to say, but the ploughmen themselves are the first to appreciate the drawers of the plough. One wonders what this mother and son might think of their sturdy relatives, for relatives they are, though maybe very distant. And this dapple grey youngster too. Freedom is still his, but as with the other yearlings and 2-year-olds, the time will come when they will be drawing a plough or a heavy commercial load. The English Shire horse is really a descendant of the powerful horse used by the heavily armoured knights of old. The native horse at that period was comparatively small, but the importation of bigger stallions increased the size of the breed. By the 16th century, the breed had developed into a strong and powerful type, not only for war, but for agriculture, and thus was the foundation of the Shire horse laid. Now, it is the most popular heavy in England because it is docile, tractable, and can manage the biggest loads so easily. The average weight of a Shire is 1 ton, but he can draw as much as 6 tons. The Yatesbury stud is one of the biggest for Shire horses in the country, and here are some of the champion stallions. Big-boned and powerfully muscled, chests of great capacity, and fine massive heads with more than a suspicion of a Roman nose. Look at those shoulders, well laid, deep and strong, as typical of this active and powerful breed as the well-sprung girth and feathered legs are. Another grand specimen shows the strong loins and broad, short back, essential characteristics of the Shire. As with every other part, the legs are firm and strong, and well able to take the weight of the horse and any load it can pull. With symmetrical outlines and a bold, free action, with strength, docility and intelligence, the combination makes one of the world's best cart horses. Here's a type which ordinary folk seldom have the opportunity of seeing, the pit pony. In the South Wales coalfields there are over 7,000, mostly Welsh ponies or cobs, out of a total of 33,000 for Great Britain. Clean-boned and thick-set, these sturdy animals are kept in fine condition, and one certainly would not associate them with the dusty grime of underground workings. These certainly seem in fine fettle whenever they come to the surface. Now here's a place that hard-working horses dream about, where, just as the knights of old hung up their swords, so these lucky nags hang up their shoes, for they've finished with work. All of them are veterans, and in this ranch they can spend the remainder of their days in freedom, with a little whoopee thrown in. In the twilight of their lives, they enjoy their first real holiday, and though they're old and still like to be smart, they are smart. Out in the paddock all day and in snug loose boxes at night, what could be sweeter? Perhaps the most typical of all English countryside scenes is a meet of the hunt. In this case, the famous Percy hunt at Alnwick. The stirrup cup is as old as hunting itself, and since winter is the hunting season, there's a good reason for it. Actually, there are nearly 500 packs of hounds in Britain, of which roughly half are foxhounds, and nearly every county has one or more packs. From the main street of Alnwick, seat of the famous Percy family, the hunt makes an attractive procession, but soon they leave the ancient Northumberland town and head for the open country. The thrill of riding a hunter across field, fence and ditch in the keen winter air is possibly the most exhilarating of all rides. Most hunts have a meet devoted to the children, when masters of hounds arrange a day in which budding huntsmen and women are taught the etiquette of the hunt. Ponies of all the well-known breeds, Dartmoor, Exmoor, New Forest, Welsh, and even Little Shetlands are seen at these meets. It's a grand day for ponies and riders alike. One of the outstanding features of feminine interest in the world of horses is the Crabbit Arabian stud of Lady Wentworth. It is the continuation of ancestral racing studs extending over 300 years. As every thoroughbred breeder knows, the Arabian is the original fountainhead of all pure light horse bloods. 3 centuries ago, the Arabian was the only fast horse in the world. Today, all our race horses trace their descent to these graceful aristocrats. With their fine carriage and springy action, they combine spirit and gentleness. With their sleek lines, they combine great weight-carrying capacity and stamina. With all, they make grand steeds. Let's examine the grey horse on the left. He certainly has the first characteristics of an Arab: beauty, quality, and style. Next, the small muzzle and large dilated nostrils that seem to indicate fire and spirit. But perhaps the most outstanding feature is the finely arched neck, an aristocrat amongst aristocrats. When you look at these pure-blooded creatures, it's not difficult to realize how their original association produced the thoroughbred stock, which has made Britain the finest horse-breeding country in the world. As we have said, every thoroughbred racehorse today is, in varying degree, a descendant of Arabs. So it will be appropriate to call for a moment at the famous Newmarket racing stables of Mr. Jack Jarvis. Newmarket is known as the headquarters of the turf, and it was largely through the patronage of King Charles 3 centuries ago that it achieved prominence. Early every morning the tracks to the heath are lined with thoroughbreds out for exercise. It's the time, too, for interested touts to rise early so they can watch the gallops and try to get the inside information so dear to tipster and backer alike. Whether they succeed is very doubtful, for racing stables are sphinx-like in retaining their secrets. Apart from being one of the most successful trainers on the English turf, Mr. Jarvis, here he is, had the distinction of training last year's Derby winner, Blue Peter. As soon as we have seen the horses back in their stables, we'll go over to Lord Rosebery's Mentmore stud, to which, owing to the war, Blue Peter has been retired. We have already mentioned how the original Arabs founded our thoroughbred stock. Perhaps the most famous of these was the Dali Arabian. The Grand Classic winner you're looking at now has in him over 40,000 repeat crosses of that wonderful Arab. All the best blood in the stud book, the Thoroughbred Register, has gone to the making of Blue Peter. When he moves, you can see the fine shoulders and great length of forearm, which have helped to give him his speed. If ever there was majesty in a horse, it is in Blue Peter. He had already won the Derby when this film was taken, so we'll hark back to Epsom Downs on the day of the world's most famous horse race. Epsom is an open course, and except for the enclosures, is free, so it's difficult to check the numbers who throng the Downs. From every corner of Britain, indeed the world, they come to see the 1,001 features that make up this meeting. It's everybody's meeting on this summer's day at Epsom when the cream of 3-year-olds battle for the greatest honor flat racing has to offer. For over 150 years, such a parade has taken place. Not always such big fields or crowds, but intensely interesting. They're off. The 160th Derby has begun, for it was in 1779 that the 12th Earl of Derby originated this famous race. The sporting tradition of the house is well maintained by the present Earl. It is always considered anybody's race until Tattenham Corner, for it's here that fortune and jockeyship sought the possibles from the also-rans. Whilst the course is downhill to Tattenham Corner, there's a slight incline after rounding it and going up the straight. It's this that tests the stamina as well as the speed of a horse, and it takes a great horse to win. It was Blue Peter that time showing his great class by winning easily, and there was no prouder man that day than Lord Rosebery, his owner. Ascot is quite a contrast to the Epsom meeting. The crowds are there, but not the sideshows. It is Royal Ascot when society turns out in all its finery, when the fashionable world displays itself to thousands of folk who consider it an interesting prelude to the main business, racing. Royal Ascot, when their majesties in a carriage drawn by the famous Windsor Greys drive in state down the course and pay their tribute to the sport of kings. Four days racing and not one race under 1,000 guineas. The finest horses in the land competing for honours. It's racing at its best. Now we come to the greatest spectacle that the turf anywhere in the world can provide, the Grand National Steeplechase at Aintree near Liverpool. While you're watching the crowd, let me give you some interesting facts. The word steeplechase originated with the days when men used to match their hunters to ride across country. They usually chose a fixed point near a steeple to guide them on their way. It was grand sport, but spectators had little chance of seeing anything but a fraction of the race. So made-up courses, where the circuit could be seen from enclosures, came into existence. Just 100 years ago, the Grand National was first run, and it was soon discovered that only horses possessing exceptional speed and stamina could stand up. And today, the 30 jumps over the 4.5-mile course still attract only the very finest steeplechasers. And now we'll let the race tell its own story, that you may watch the splendid action of these thoroughbreds as they take jump after jump round the whirling course. Miles and 30 of the hardest jumps. Yet the winner, Workman, who is in front of you now, is running as though he had just started. A terrific performance. Most of the people cheering the winner are connected in some form or other with industry. They know machines. They live by machines. Yet the reason they are there, the reason why racing flourishes, is basically the Britishers' love of horses. Thoroughbred or cart horse, admiration for a fine beast or deep attachment to a close friend, the affection is always there. From sleek speed to magnificent strength, the horse remains man's noblest friend. In the field, in traffic or in sport, his great heart beats in the service of man.